In the late 1800s, the Pullman Palace Car Company was the primary producer of sleeping cars in the United States, those being railway cars providing sleeping arrangements for passengers. The company owner, George M. Pullman, had built a town for his workers in the 1880s in an attempt to show that improving their material conditions could also be profitable. However, the Panic of 1893 hurt sales of sleeping cars, leading Pullman to fire some workers and cut the wages of others by 20 to 30%. These wage drops were not matched with lower rent or prices of goods in the company town. Additionally, workers had not been able to purchase and own housing within the town since its inception. On May 7, 1894, a group of workers met with the vice president of the company in order to rectify the disparity between wages and the cost of living and request an end to poor treatment by foremen. On May 10th, 3 of the workers in attendance at the meeting were fired with no explanation given, which ended negotiations. 4,000 Pullman workers went on strike the next day. The American Railway Union, or ARU, was one of the largest labor unions in the country at the time, being composed of all workers employed by or associated with railroads instead of the more traditional structure of smaller unions grouped by workers of different skill sets. It had won a victory against the Great Northern Railway Company in April 1894, causing it to roll back wage cuts for workers. Around a third of Pullman's employees were members of it by June 1894. On June 26th, the leader of the ARU, Eugene V. Debs, initiated a boycott of Pullman railway cars. By June 30th, 125,000 workers across 29 railroads had gone on strike instead of servicing those cars or trains containing them. This boycott halted rail traffic in 27 states across the Midwest and western portions of the U.S. One flaw in the strikers' plan related to their treatment of black railway workers. 2,000 black porters were employed by Pullman, though they were not accepted into the local Pullman Union or the ARU, so they did not participate in the strike. Additionally, the railroads affected by the strike began to hire black strikebreakers, who were concerned that the ARU's discrimination would hurt their employment prospects. The strike had the greatest effect in Chicago, where it substantially hampered the operation of railroads. Despite Debs's efforts, violence began to break out, with strikers blocking railroad tracks and attacking strikebreakers. On June 29th, workers in Blue Island, Illinois, set fire to buildings and derailed a locomotive. On July 2nd, U.S. Attorney General Richard Olney obtained an injunction from 2 circuit court justices prohibiting ARU leadership from encouraging workers to strike or coordinating their actions. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was passed by Congress with the intent of stopping actions of corporations involving interstate commerce that led to monopolies or anti-competitive markets. However, in this case it was applied against the strikers, which outraged the labor movement in the country. Debs and the ARU leaders disobeyed the injunction and told their members to continue to strike peacefully. Federal troops arrived in Chicago on the night of July 3rd in an attempt to enforce the injunction and ensure that the trains continued to run. This was done under the position that some of them contained mail, though the Cleveland administration was generally pro-business and saw the political benefits of returning the railroads to normal operation. The arrival of troops led to greater violence, including clashes between them and strikers. On July 6th, rioters destroyed hundreds of railway cars in Chicago. Additionally, an estimated 70 strikers were killed and 57 wounded across the nationwide strike. The presence of federal troops began to return the railroads to standard activity levels. Seeing that the strike was becoming a losing effort, on July 6th, Debs tried to extend it into a general strike involving all union members in Chicago. However, leaders of other national unions elected not to join in, effectively ending any chances of success. The national media was generally against the strikers, driving worry about anarchy and lawlessness, and utilizing xenophobia against them given that many were recent immigrants to the U.S. However, they did receive support from farmers and other individuals aligned with the working class. The strikers also had some support from Chicago Mayor John Hopkins and Illinois Governor John Peter Altgeld, the latter wanting to use state militia rather than federal troops to maintain calm during the strike. The strike was essentially done by mid-July, though some workers continued on until the end of the month in the western portions of the country. The ARU officially ended it on August 2nd. Pullman rehired the striking workers under the condition that they pledged to never join a union. Debs was arrested and sentenced to 6 months in prison for violating the injunction, while the ARU was dissolved. The injunction used against the ARU was the first example of what would become a trend over the next few decades, with corporations utilizing similar ones to end strikes and boycotts. However, the strikers did win 2 minor victories at the federal level. First, on June 28th, President Grover Cleveland signed a bill into law establishing the first Monday in September as Labor Day in order to appease organized labor interests. Second, a commission created by the Cleveland administration pushed back against George Pullman and his company in its report for the financial strains he imposed upon workers and his unwillingness to negotiate with them.